KSA Technopak Ankur Bisen. He's Senior Vice President, joins us right now on the show. Ankur, good having you. Thanks so much for joining in. Is this par for the course, Ankur? The kind of new product launches, as well as varieties and price hikes that are coming into place across the FMCG space?
Yeah, so it's an interesting trend, but it is something that is not unexpected. It talks a lot about the market and market maturity in the consumption space. 10-15 years back, market across categories was relatively homogeneous. Few brands used to dominate that space, but now we see heterogeneity in the market at price points, in terms of taste, in terms of product aspirations. So what the brands are doing at this point in time in terms of launching variants, looking at price increases, is a manifestation of consumer need in terms of consumers' readiness to absorb products at a higher price, which in turn reflects the kind of differentiated need that the consumers seek. It also reflects the heterogeneity in terms of regional tastes and preferences. So the examples that you mentioned a little while back are all examples of what is happening in the market in terms of this heterogeneity shaping up.
Okay, for example, Nestle, Ankur, their calendar year 18 forecast in the annual note is speaking about how the space is picking up and they want to be ahead of the curve. So they expect, I believe, calendar year 18 to be fairly strong. Brokerages who track the stock have been fairly optimistic with that commentary as well. And it's being seen with these quality companies, at least from a market's perspective, that under periods of a lull, which happened during Maggi, the damage is not as much. But when the lull goes over and the pickup again comes in, the benefits to investors seems to be very strong. How are you looking at this pocket, the Nestle's, the HULs of the world?
Yeah, see, the Nestle's and the HULs of the world, I would place them in what I called need-based expenditure of consumer household. And if you look at the food expenditure in the retail basket of a household, almost 67% of retail consumption comes from food. And what is happening in the market is that food is rapidly transitioning towards packaged food or processed food. And these companies, both HUL and Nestle, represent capabilities in terms of the ability to offer packaged solutions in the market in terms of what is happening in packaged and food processing space. So while there were periods of lull where for various reasons these companies their stocks took a beating for various internal and external reasons. But with that behind, now when these companies talk about growth, talk about the opportunity, and talk about packaged food in general, obviously this is treated with optimism because these are the bellwethers of packaged food industry in India and for growth. So whatever is happening in Nestle, the kind of guidance that Nestle is giving in signifies the growth of packaged food industry in India, which as a sector was sort of an underrepresented from a policy standpoint, but in the last 4-5 years we have seen a lot of policy push in terms of food park coming up, vendor capability getting enhanced, and that's the source of confidence for Nestle and HUL that the ecosystem for food processing is now fairly matured compared to what it was a couple of years back. Not only processing but also delivery, warehousing, logistics, and that's where this confidence comes from when they talk about this guidance around packaged food space.
Okay, Ankur, I don't know if how closely you look at QSRs, and in particular, Jubilant FoodWorks. And the reason I bring that about is that ever since this change in management has happened, their same-store sales growth, maybe because of change of management, maybe because of a lower base due to DMON and GST, so on and so forth, the last 2 or 3 or 4 quarters have been phenomenal for Jubilant FoodWorks, indeed for the QSR space at large. What's happening here with Jubilant, with McDonald's, and do you expect this same store sales growth numbers or the pace of growth or the nature of growth that these companies are showing, do you expect that to last? Is it possible for these numbers to last for the next 2, 3, 4 quarters, and is it possible for you to predict that?
No, it is absolutely possible. See, whatever has happened in the QSR space in the last 2-3 years, where Jubilant stock took a beating, and McDonald's going through its issues with the franchisee in North and East India, they are largely reasons internal to the company. I mean, Jubilant was slow to sort of respond to the market need in terms of pricing. McDonald's with the franchise related issues, what we call as internal issues, they were not a reflection of the macros in terms of the QSR space in India. Macros of QSR in India continues to be very strong. We have seen double-digit growth in the QSR space, rapid formalization of the industry, not only restricted to metros, but we are seeing that percolating to tier 1, tier 2 cities. So in this backdrop, now what we are seeing in terms of double-digit growth, both for Jubilant and McDonald's and other QSRs as well, we're going to see that momentum continue not only for the next 3-4 quarters. We believe as a firm we've been engaged in a lot of research around QSR space and the formalization. It is a transition from informal to formal sector that is going to drive growth, and the total size of the industry is nearly $50 billion, and $15-16 billion is currently organized, and organized growth is outpacing unorganized growth in the QSR space. So that's where the real growth is going to come from, and that's where we believe the QSR space will continue to show a good momentum of growth. Another thing that has happened with the QSR space specific to Jubilant is their ability to take the QSR story beyond tier 1, tier 2 towns. I mean, today almost Jubilant is present in excess of 250 cities, 1300 plus stores. So it is not so much about how many stores you're opening in fewer metros, but it is also about your ability to sort of create a reach in the market and catering to a larger urban, semi-urban mix. And we're going to see that in McDonald's as well, with their franchisee issue behind for the east and north part of India. We're going to see the same play out to happen from McDonald's. Burger King also, because of these macros, is betting on the same story. So that's going to continue in the next 3-4 quarters, in short.
Okay. Ankur, my final question to you, it's a very wide bucket. I know it's a difficult question that I'm asking you, but if you can pinpoint, not really from a stock perspective, but purely from a strategy perspective, a company, the strategy of which has really stood out for you and which could keep that company in good stead over the course of the next 12 to 18, 24 odd months. It's a very wide bucket, I know, and very varied, but still, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, so disclaimer, I don't own any stocks in these companies, in this company. But I believe what we have seen in this DMart story to play out, and the way DMart story has happened in the stock market, that's going to continue. And it's not new in the sense that we have tracked DMart even before it was listed. Some of the things that have worked in DMart's favor is the understanding of DMart about modern retailing in the food and grocery space, and what works and what doesn't work. What we see in DMart is standardization of store size, intelligent product mix, high sell-through, regional cluster approach that DMart has taken. So these are all principles of retailing that needs to get in place for retail to succeed, and DMart has done that. So we believe, DMart is a good story.
Other retailers not being able to pull through in the same way, and again, a varied space, I know, but Shoppers Stop has this tie-up with Amazon, which a lot of people believe could actually give it a big leg up. Kishore Biani came and spoke about that vision of the next 20-30 years and how the sales will really multiply so much.
Yeah.
Other retailers may not be able to match DMart, but do you think that story is alive and kicking, or that's just too difficult to forecast right now?
See, so there's a lot of learning from DMart that we see also happening in future. Future apparently is now the last man standing in terms of the retail industry, and sort of emerge as a leader. When I say DMart, I'm not undermining future retail at all, because future retail has seen through a lot of the entire curve of ups and downs, and I think future retail is now poised for a growth, and I subscribe to what Mr. Biani has to say about company, because whatever had happened in the future retail in the past, I think a lot of learning has happened in the company. Company has absorbed what should it be doing, what it should not be doing. So there's a lot of focus within future retail in terms of growth around categories, around focus around e-commerce, around supply chain, private label. So I think these are all the right ticks that future retail has managed to do in the last 2-3 years, and I think that momentum will continue. As far as Shoppers Stop is concerned, see, you have to look at Shoppers Stop in two buckets. Of there was a food hypercity which eventually got acquired by Future, which also reflects the consolidation need and scale need. And then what remains of Shoppers Stop is a department store model of offering multi-brand under this umbrella. And somewhere it realized that just a brick offering in a department store model will not work, and therefore you need a e-commerce sort of a play, and that's where Amazon sort of tie-up comes in intelligently. So again, the right tick box. So what Shoppers has done is hived off non-area of focus, something that they don't want to sort of focus on, but wants to focus on fashion, wants to focus on where the company's retail story all started from Shoppers Stop, and they want to grow it. And we believe on a standalone basis with a lot of focus, there is a lot of potential that has happened. So both in future retail as well as in Shoppers Stop, we think that they have undertaken right steps in terms of creating a lot of focus in their strategy, and that's where we believe that their growth momentum should continue.
Ankur, pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us at Bloomberg Quint.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good day.